Okay, so welcome to the first of these series of, of live streams. So I'm going to be running through a few things on flat 5, the Josh Smith flat 5, and then a few things on Beebo. It's going to be the same stuff on Hector. So there's been a few regular questions that I'm getting that I'm also going to try and answer. And I'm going to try and run through some of the basics of how to do stuff. If people do have questions, I'll try and answer them as well. One sec. Hopefully that all sounds okay. Hopefully the audio levels and stuff are all right. We'll see if we can tune this as we go along in the future. All right, so one of the regular questions we get with flat 5 is how to do useful things, how to get kind of fuzz sounds, how to do useful things with the resonance. So if you turn these guys on, so channel A just has these controls. As you can see, these are the only controls you'll get in channel A. And then when you turn on channel B, you'll get these other controls. Now, for the resonance to do anything interesting, the resonance boosts at a particular frequency. So at the frequency you choose to cut off. So at the moment, you can boost as much as you want on this high pass frequency here, but it'll be boosting below what you can hear anyway. So that's not going to do much. So if you pull that up a little bit, and then we start to boost, we'll hear what that sounds like. So I'll just show you a little bit. Get my guitar on. Hopefully you can hear something there. Not useful. Oh, I just tripped on the cable. That's why this isn't doing anything. Sorry about that. I just moved and the cable fell out. All right. I did think I changed that earlier. All right, so now that we have sound, let's go back to checking that. Yeah, so round 2. So now that I have guitar, I'll just show you how to do this now. So if we go this one, so we can rolling off some sound there. Remember with these ones that each of the lights, they're just kind of an approximate amount because there is lots of, there's 4,000. More than 4,096 values in this range. So even though it looks like there's, you're on this one or this one, there is numbers in between. And you can hear that in there. So we'll start doing something interesting with this low pass. If we crank some resonance in there, you see it's now boosting that up a lot. And it'll start to self-oscillate at different frequencies. See, so we weren't getting any self-oscillation lower, but as we get high, we'll start to get self-oscillation. Turn that down a little tiny bit. You can boost that up. See how that's starting to give you a bit more kind of chunky bottom end. And this will vary interestingly depending on how we stack these two, because the filters are in the B channel. So that means if you're creating a lot of interesting content in the A channel, and then you can then filter it out with the B channel. So if we start getting this a bit chunkier, turn down that volume just to check how my see, we can start to get interesting stuff out of the filters there. You see that'll sound quite different if we crank down the resonance. We get quite different effects. See that? And if we try some resonance in the highs as well, you see those start to get some noise up high. So there we go. You'll notice that you'll see that resonance starts to drop out some of your volume as well at the bottom. That's the characteristic of this filter. So yeah, the main thing to know about resonance is to do anything interesting with it, you're going to have the filters at somewhere where it's actually cutting off some signal, and there's got to be the more content there is in the signal cut off, the more interesting the resonance is going to be. So yeah, that's one of the general gist about fun things with resonance. Obviously you can also start to modulate those resonances, the actual resonance and the cutoff. Mostly modulating cutoff will be more interesting. Like, so if we've got two different sides in this preset, like so, crank down this guy a little bit, and crank this one all the way up, and turn our resonance nice and high on both sides. So we're not modulating that, because any difference between the two sides is going to be changed by the modulation. This might get a bit hectic in all truthfulness. And now if we go into, we get fun sounds, because those ones are now starting to self-oscillate, which may or may not be what you want. See, they self-oscillate more depending on what content they've got in the signal. Which, you know, some fun sounds to start with. All right, next thing I'm going to show is some stuff with Beebo. Yeah, it'll be exactly the same on Hector. So you'll see how I've set up the patch to start with. I'm using a wet dry here. That's often a way I like to have my patches structured, just so I can easily control the sound of the levels of each side. So I can control, hey, what's happening with my dry. Because I might have some effects actually on my dry quote marks, and some on my wet, and just have one as my kind of normal sound and one as my other kind of sound. But that's a nice way to do that. You see I'm running mono in from the flat 5, and then I'm running out here. I'm using it in left to right mode, but you can use it obviously the other way as well. So one of the interesting things is how to get a lot out of some of the simple modules, which some people don't explore some of the simple ones as much. So we're going to start off with just the basic delay. This is the super CPU efficient one, so you can have a ton of them, and they're quite versatile. So we'll add a couple. Maybe, so you can see how I'm adding those. I'm just holding it, pressing it, and then the icons appear down here, and then I'm pressing duplicate to duplicate that one. So now I've got some delays. Cool. I might want to control the level after each of these. A good way to do that is with a VCA, a voltage controlled amplifier. It's a really simple building block of these kind of modular synth patches. So now, instead of controlling the level of the delay, which will change the repeats, so if I turn the level of a delay down to 0, the repeats will stop. There won't be any sound coming out, even if I turn it up again. Whereas if it's having a lot of repeats and I turn the volume down afterwards with a VCA, then if I turn it up again, there'll still be those repeats. I can use one of these at the beginning to change the signal being fed in, to fade in and out the signal in, or one at the end to change to fade them in and out. All that's easy. So I'll add a VCA there. I'll duplicate that guy too. All right, let's drag these guys over here, and you can whack duplicate multiple times too from the same thing. So, all right. So I've got some delays, I've got some VCAs, and I'll connect up some of those. So I'm going to cascade some of these into each other, and we'll see if we can make something vaguely interesting to start with, and then we'll get into the fun bit. So the interesting bit with modular things is these delays just send the repeats. Same, the reverbs will just send the tail. That means it's very easy if you think of these as send and return, if you're used to mixing kind of desks and stuff like that. It's easy to have effects on the signal that's going to the delay, and then it's easy to have effects on the repeats of the delay. So I'll show you how to do that. But yeah, first we'll build something simple with just the delay and the VCAs. The VCAs are a very powerful technique. So I'll cascade that into there, connect that. So again, you just hold and press to connect. Write that one into there. And this guy into there. No, don't want to control that. That one into there. And then, do we just cascade them all the way, or do we do some paralleling? Let's have some parallel stuff. Cool. And we might have another VCA right at the end for master. I guess we've got the wet dry, so we don't really need to. Actually, we'll run these in stereo into the other one. Forget about that. There we go. So these guys going in there, and we can run them into the wet dry. Left and right. Cool. So turn our wet dry to have some some wet. So we've got some wet there. We've got a little bit going on. I think I would like to have boatloads of that. We might play with tone a little bit later. We can change our timings a little bit, so these are a little bit more interesting. We'll turn this guy, again, ends up on the knobs when you touch something. We'll probably end up, we'll try one of these a little bit shorter. Okay, lots going on there. So that's pretty hectic. So now we're going to do something. So we've got this routes into these. That's pretty straightforward. However, the fun thing we want to do now is make that be modulated. So that's the powerful thing about the Beebo system and modular synthesis in general, is the idea of control voltages. So you can have, so these signals, audio signals going through here, but you can have control signals that change something in here. In Beebo and Hector, control and audio are actually interchangeable. You just go into settings and you can turn that on. So you can use audio, CV and audio modules interchangeably. If there's a module that looks like it would be interesting as a effect on CV, you can use it. Like if you want to delay a CV signal, for example. So let's add in a nice big fancy modulating thing. One of my faves is the looping envelope. And happily it has lots of outputs which will work well for our different VCAs. So this one, the looping envelope, is, as the name suggests, an envelope. So, up, attack, decay, sustain, releasey kind of thing. Well, it's got some of that kind of stuff. As you can see, attack and decays. And it also can loop those, so we get cyclic ones, in which case it just becomes an LFO. So this is actually based off a module by Mutable Instruments, so you can, if you want to see how the original module works, there's videos and manuals about that. So it's got a lot of features, so that is handy to know. So it's got these different outputs, so we're going to connect them up to some of the things and see how they work. So let's grab this one to VCA, to the delay, this VCA for this delay. Grab this one to VCA. Oh, I meant to do 2. Oops, sorry. Let's go for 2 to there. 2 to there. 2 to 3, yeah. And then 3 to there. Yeah. So now, let's go for, keep that frequency up a little bit more. We'll see if it does something interesting. That's pretty hectic, isn't it? You see how we've got into kind of weird granular territory right away. And I'd much prefer to do different times. There we go. And we can change the shape of that to make that do other interesting things as well. It's a bit too pointy. Obviously the big slow movements will, if you go down here to very slow, it'll work quite differently. They'll fade in and out instead. Obviously, one of the cute things is we can also modulate this looping envelope, so we can do interesting things with that. At audio rate, it'll probably start sounding incredibly weird. You don't love that. All right. we can create another interesting pattern with this guy by sequencing it. So we can tell it when to be triggered. So there's a lot of options for that. We could use something like the Euclidean sequencer, or we could use the drum pattern generator or onset generator detector. We could even use something like the step sequencer. Yeah, all right. We can have an example of that. So we'll use the one with the internal clock because we won't drive it from somewhere else. All right, let's connect that up to our trigger here. We'll create a couple of ons somewhere. I forgot, you can just press there. Yeah, okay, that's an interesting looking pattern. We'll start with that one. We'll start that going. And now we'll change this to be okay. So now these are controlling the length of those envelopes. Oh, I was pressing the yeah. All right. Even I get it wrong. So yeah, we've now got a very, very flexible granular system just by doing these kind of, you know, things with delays. And again, this looping envelope is being now driven by this one. So you'll see that it happens when this one goes off. So yeah. So step sequencer is now driving that. So this is just delays on delays. Last thing I'll add to this kind of patch is we might want to make something, do something interesting on the repeats. And a great way to do that is a flanger or something like that. So, and happily, we've got a output from the looping envelope that we can drive the flanger with, because we chose flanger X, which has the external inputs. So let's disconnect this guy, the output for that, connect it up to the flanger, and connect the flanger up to, I think right. Yeah, right. Yep. So nothing super exciting yet. Out 4. So things are happening to that one. And again, you know, you can make this as detailed or as straightforward as you'd like. I think the phaser will sound more interesting, but we'll try a flanger on the phaser on the other side. I think the flanger will be more interesting, but yeah. Connect this guy to there. This one was going to left. Cool. And now I'll just use another one of these. Maybe out 2. So yeah. Yeah, so weird granular action, as complicated or as simple as you'd like that to be. So obviously, you know, we have this, you know, being able to have effects that are just on the repeats. So our dry doesn't change, but our wet does now, because these are just on those repeats. And we can make that as complicated or as, you know, as simple as you'd like. This has been driven by this pattern here. Or, as we saw earlier, if I disconnect this guy, we can have this being driven internally by the, as an oscillator. I might turn that up a little bit faster. That gets pretty weird. It's the second time I've done that. Okay. Oh, that's very slow now. Okay. Bring that over there. Oh, that's getting interesting. So yeah, slightly more glitchy. So yeah, you can get some really interesting effects by just using a simple module controlling another module like that. Obviously, you can do things like that with the chaos controller or, you know, some of the other envelopes. So yeah, it's a very powerful technique. Okay, I will look at the question as well. How to save loops? You can't. With the looper at the moment, you can't save any content. The plan is eventually, but it is kind of a longish term plan to be able to save them onto a USB flash drive. My big worry about this at the moment is how to do that in a way that's comfortable, because as soon as you put a flash drive into the back and it's sticking out, it's kind of a bit fragile because they stick out a long way and there's a lot of leverage on the poor little USB ports. So if you step on them or bump them or something, you could damage the ports. So maybe I just tell the people that they have to use the tiny little stubby ones if they're going to keep it in there much. Yeah, that's kind of my worry there. But yeah, loop saving is a thing that I would like. We are going to add sampler features in the not too distant future. I've been saying that for a very long time, but it is actually starting to happen. There's a couple of other big features that are coming sooner than that. Obviously, at NAMM, I showed Strum, which is the new MIDI controller. That's coming now. I fixed the quantizer recently because it was massively broken. And that's actually working now, which is good. And I fixed up a few other bugs around the place, which will be the next thing. There are some other bigger changes that are going to be in the next preset, or maybe the next update, or maybe the one after that. Mostly, yeah, there's going to be a new module or two, which hopefully will be fun. They should be. There's been a few people asking me to look into some popular amp simulation stuff that's famous at the moment. So I've been looking a little bit into that. Yeah. So yeah, that's on my to-do list. One question I have had quite a bit lately is how to make a particular preset be the preset that you get when you start up. So I'll just show you how to do that. So if we go into this one here, it's the presets thing. We'll go in there, and then there is one that says set list. So we'll press that, and then you can add things to here. So at the moment, this is my set list, so it will start up with empty. The one that's the first one in the list, that's the one it will start up with. So it'll start up with empty, and then when you press these foot switches, it'll go to 50 sci-fi. Add an echo, and then confusingly 50 sci-fi again. You can add more and remove more from this list, and yeah, if you tap on them, you can choose which preset you want to have instead. So, I can grab the rotary or something instead. I'll probably grab this chorus, and now when it starts up, it'll start up on that basic chorus. And you just hit back. So yeah, that's how to change what the startup preset is. That's also how you bind stuff to program changes. So that those numbers that are there, that next to it, they're the program change from MIDI, the MIDI PC message that you need to send to get that preset. So if it says PC5 and you send, if it sends 5, you send PC5 to get it. All right. Are there any? Sorry, I just glancing at some of the questions. Are there any tips for a preset for a Hammond organ? I'd say rotary is the thing for Hammonds. The rotary is very flexible and very powerful. It does eat tons of CPU. It's like, yum, 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 I want to eat all your CPU. So you can't do a ton of stuff at the same time. The advanced rotary and the basic rotary are actually the same algorithm, just with more parameters, like exposed. So they both eat all the CPU, so you might as well use the advanced one if you want to have all the extra knobs. You can do things like change the mic position and stuff like that. It's very fancy. So yes, I would recommend trying that. If you want to generate, so if you want to patch that sounds good on a Hammond, if you've got the Hammond going into, organ in general, going into Beebo, I'd recommend, rotary, that kind of stuff on it for the, traditional sounds. If you want to generate key sounds in Beebo, then I'd say it doesn't do with an organ. If you're generating from MIDI, you're going to want to have a lot of polyphony. Want to be able to play lots of notes at once, especially if you've got both manuals and foot pedals. That means you can have more polyphony basically on an organ than anything else, because you can play your feet and your hands. So you really want something that can do that, which for this environment will be something like a Rompler or a synth. So it won't do that well. Monophonic stuff, it does very well. Low numbers of polyphony, it does fine. But high numbers of polyphony, wanting to be able to have, 15 probably notes at once, or something like that comfortably, 12 minimum, would be challenging in this environment. So I wouldn't really recommend it for trying to be the organ synth. I am planning to add some stuff for Romplers, so being able to load sound fonts and stuff, which are very CPU efficient. So that would be good for that kind of thing. For some elements, obviously Romplers aren't perfect for organs, and some basically organ synths would be kind of neat. There are some organ sounds in there at the moment with the there's actually two ways you can do it. The macro oscillator has some chord modes which sort of get in that territory. And then the multi-resonator has the last mode in it. Things is kind of organy sounding. But yeah, I would probably run the key 9 into this. Yeah, definitely. I would focus on using this as the rotary and other things like that instead of it being the actual sound generator in that case. Hopefully that is a comprehensive answer. So yeah, I think that's probably most of the things I want to show for this week. I have no idea what the time is now. Yeah, that's probably how long I was planning to go for. So yeah, if you've got any last minute questions, I'll have to think if there's anything else that comes up a lot. So again, with these ones, I'm doing some pretty basic ways this is routed. Obviously, I might try routing these into each other a bit. Like delay 3 into delay 2 like that, which is a little bit more visually confusing, but will create a bit more interesting sound. That's pretty hectic. I might ditch that phaser and run this one into there. We'll just have this in mono. So this stuff can get pretty weird, but I'll change that. Sorry, I'll change that to taking these. That's a bit more fun. So obviously, yeah, quite straightforward to get some fun stuff. If you've got some of those more sharp edges on some of that, especially with the VCA kind of stuff, it's sometimes useful to be able to smooth some of your things. So if you can run the sound into the CV into a slew limiter or a filter, and just any audio filter we find too. These filters are slew limiters. Or maybe your sound source lets you choose smoothness. Your CV source, I mean. Most things for this week. I think next week I'll be chatting a bit about ambient reverby kind of sounds, because that's a question I have quite a lot. I might do some stuff with MIDI, because that's the other big question I get. one of the plans for the stream is to go through all of the modules and kind of have a deep dive in some of them. So this was kind of just to focus on some of the things you can do with delay without actually, doing very much in the actual delay module. Obviously, tone is a way to remove some of those highs if you want. So if we crank up tone, we can pull off some of those highs from our repeats. We have very, very dark repeats then. Very, very dark repeats. Well, that's a bit clicky at the moment. I'll turn that down a little. Calm that down a bit. You go over there. Probably because I got the different shapes. Repeats are very dark now. So yeah, that's some of the basics on how to just do things so modules are being changed by other modules in vaguely complicated ways. So obviously this is kind of how to build a granular out of just delays, but you can obviously have more and more delays if you want, and different filters at different parts, different modulators at different parts of the signal. So I think that's the general gist for today. And yeah, I'll try and get some questions for next week. Hopefully have some other interesting stuff then. I'm sorry for any background noise, by the way, too. It's a kind of factory environment. All right, so that's it for today.